Hello again, dreamer. Get comfy. Let the world fade away. Tonight, we travel to a forest that remembers every dream ever dreamed. Let's begin. In the dim recesses of human history, long before the concept of organized libraries emerged, our ancestors began their quest to preserve knowledge through rudimentary means. The earliest attempts at information storage can be traced back to prehistoric cave paintings in Lascaux, France, dating approximately 17,000 years ago. These primitive yet sophisticated depictions of animals and hunting scenes represented humanity's initial efforts to document experiences and share wisdom across generations. As civilizations evolved, so did their methods of record-keeping, progressing from simple pictographs to more complex systems of writing. The ancient Sumerians of Mesopotamia marked a revolutionary turning point around 3400 BCE with the development of cuneiform writing on clay tablets. This innovation transformed how information was stored and disseminated, allowing for more detailed records of transactions, laws, and cultural narratives. Similarly, the Egyptians developed hieroglyphics, etching their elaborate symbols onto papyrus scrolls that could be rolled and stored more efficiently than heavy stone tablets. These early writing systems laid the groundwork for what would eventually become formalized repositories of knowledge. Throughout antiquity, various cultures independently developed their own methods of preserving important information. The Chinese oracle bones from the Shang dynasty, circa 1610–46 BC, documented royal divinations, while Indian scholars preserved sacred texts through oral traditions supported by mnemonic devices. Each civilization faced unique challenges in maintaining their growing collections of knowledge, leading to the establishment of specialized spaces for storing these precious records. In ancient Egypt, temples served as both religious centers and repositories for sacred texts, while Mesopotamian cities maintained archives of administrative documents. The Greeks made significant advances in organizing knowledge during the classical period. The Lyceum, founded by Aristotle around 335 BC, exemplified an early academic institution where students could access a collection of scrolls covering various subjects. However, it was Alexandria that would become renowned for its monumental library. Established during the reign of Ptolemy II Philadelphus in the 3rd century BC, the Library of Alexandria represented the pinnacle of ancient scholarship, housing hundreds of thousands of scrolls and attracting scholars from across the Mediterranean world. These early repositories of knowledge operated under strict protocols. Access was typically limited to priests, scribes, or members of the ruling class who had undergone rigorous training in reading and writing. The preservation of texts required careful attention to environmental conditions, with special chambers designed to protect valuable documents from moisture, insects, and other threats. Scribes played a crucial role in maintaining and expanding these collections, meticulously copying texts by hand and ensuring their accuracy through systematic proofreading processes. The evolution of these early knowledge repositories reflected humanity's increasing sophistication in managing information. From simple cataloging systems using physical markers to more complex classification schemes based on subject matter, these institutions developed practical solutions to organize their growing collections. The concept of lending materials, however, remained largely foreign, as the value of these texts was considered too great to risk their removal from secure storage facilities. As these ancient civilizations flourished and declined, they left behind invaluable lessons about the importance of preserving knowledge. The destruction of the Library of Alexandria, though shrouded in mystery, underscored the vulnerability of centralized repositories and inspired future generations to develop more resilient systems for safeguarding human wisdom. These early experiments in knowledge management laid the foundation for what would eventually evolve into modern libraries. Though centuries would pass before the concept of individual access through a formalized borrowing system would emerge, the transformation of private knowledge repositories into public institutions marked a pivotal moment in the history of information dissemination. During the Middle Ages, monastic libraries stood as bastions of learning in Europe. Preserving ancient texts and producing new manuscript through painstaking manual labor, monks worked in scriptoriums, meticulously copying works by candlelight, creating illuminated manuscripts that were both artistic masterpieces and vessels of knowledge. However, access to these treasures remained strictly controlled, available only to clergy and select nobility who could navigate the complex social hierarchies governing medieval society. The Renaissance period witnessed a significant shift in attitudes toward knowledge sharing. Starting in the 14th century, Italian city-states like Florence and Venice became centers of intellectual activity, establishing public libraries that catered to emerging merchant classes and educated citizens. The Malatistiana Library in Cesena, founded in 1452, stands as one of the earliest examples of a civic library accessible to the general public. Unlike its predecessors, this institution implemented a revolutionary system of open stacks, allowing patrons direct access to books rather than relying on intermediaries to retrieve requested volume. The invention of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg in 1440 dramatically altered the landscape of information distribution. Suddenly, books could be produced in quantities previously unimaginable, making them more affordable and accessible to a broader audience. This technological breakthrough coincided with growing demands for education beyond clerical circles, leading to the establishment of university libraries that served expanding student population. Oxford's Bodleian Library, officially opened in 1602, exemplified this trend by implementing a registration system that tracked users but still fell short of modern lending practices. The 17th and 18th centuries saw the emergence of subscription libraries, particularly in England, where groups of individuals pooled resources to create shared collections. The Bristol Library Society, founded in 1748, pioneered membership-based access models that would influence later developments in library systems. Members paid annual fees to borrow books, marking a significant step toward the democratization of knowledge. These institutions often maintained detailed ledgers recording book loans, borrower information, and due dates, precursors to modern circulation systems. However, true public access remained limited by social class distinctions and economic barriers. Many libraries continued to restrict entry based on wealth or social standing, while others imposed dress codes or behavioral regulations that effectively excluded lower-class patrons. The concept of universal access, regardless of social status or financial means, remained largely theoretical until the late 19th century. Even then, implementation faced numerous obstacles, including resistance from traditionalists who viewed certain types of literature as inappropriate for general consumption. The Industrial Revolution accelerated changes in library access policies. Driven by urbanization and increased literacy rates, mechanics institutes, established throughout Britain and its colonies, aimed to provide technical and scientific education to working-class adults. These institutions combined libraries with lecture halls and classrooms, promoting self-improvement through education. While their primary focus was vocational training, they incidentally contributed to the normalization of public book borrowing among non-elite populations. By the mid-19th century, debates about library access had expanded beyond mere physical entry to questions of content availability. Progressive librarians advocated for collections that reflected diverse interests and needs, challenging traditional notions of appropriate reading material. This period saw the gradual introduction of fiction, popular science, and current affairs publications into library holdings, reflecting changing societal values and educational priorities. Yet even as access improved, many libraries maintained restrictive borrowing policies, often requiring personal references or imposing substantial deposits before granting borrowing privileges. The movement toward truly public libraries gained momentum through legislative action. The Public Libraries Act of 1850 in England marked a watershed moment, authorizing local governments to establish free public libraries funded by taxation. Although implementation was slow and uneven, this legislation established the principle that access to information should be considered a public good rather than a privilege reserved for the elite. Similar movements emerged in other industrialized nations, gradually transforming libraries from exclusive preserves of the educated classes into community centers serving diverse populations. Despite these advances, significant barriers to equitable access persisted well into the 20th century. Racial segregation, gender discrimination, and socioeconomic inequalities continued to shape library policies and practices. The struggle for universal access would remain an ongoing challenge, requiring constant vigilance and advocacy from librarians, educators, and community leaders committed to democratic principles of information sharing. The conceptual leap from restricted access to formalized borrowing systems emerged gradually during the late 19th century, driven by both technological innovations and evolving social attitudes toward public education. The first recorded instance of a systematic approach to book lending occurred in 1872 at the Boston Public Library, where librarian Charles Ammi Cutter introduced a pioneering method of tracking borrowed materials. Cutter's system utilized a combination of borrower registration cards and book catalog cards, each bearing matching identification numbers, a rudimentary yet groundbreaking solution to the problem of monitoring library collections. This early system faced immediate challenges that tested its practicality and effectiveness. The manual nature of card creation and maintenance proved labor-intensive, requiring dedicated staff to manage the growing volume of transactions. Initial implementation revealed significant issues with organization and retrieval, as borrowers frequently returned books to incorrect locations, complicating the already complex task of inventory management. Moreover, the absence of standardized procedures led to inconsistencies in record keeping, with some branches developing ad hoc solutions that lacked compatibility with neighboring institutions. Technological limitations posed perhaps the greatest obstacle to efficient borrowing operations. The reliance on handwritten records created opportunities for errors in transcription, while the physical durability of paper cards proved problematic in high-traffic environments. Environmental factors such as humidity and temperature fluctuations often damaged these fragile documents, necessitating frequent replacements and revisions. Security concerns also emerged, as the portable nature of borrowing cards made them vulnerable to loss or theft, potentially compromising sensitive patron information. Social resistance presented another formidable barrier to the widespread adoption of borrowing systems. Established library patrons, accustomed to unrestricted access within library walls, initially resisted the imposition of formal registration requirements. Some viewed the need for documentation as an invasion of privacy, while others worried about potential misuse of personal information. Cultural attitudes toward property ownership influenced perceptions of book borrowing, with many equating lending with diminished value or increased risk of damage to precious materials. Financial constraints further complicated the implementation of borrowing systems. The costs associated with printing registration materials, hiring additional staff, and developing infrastructure to support new procedures strained already limited library budgets. Many smaller institutions struggled to justify these investments, particularly in communities where demand for borrowing services remained uncertain. The lack of standardized funding mechanisms meant that libraries often had to rely on inconsistent municipal support or private donations to sustain their borrowing programs. Operational challenges extended beyond technical and financial considerations. Staff training requirements increased substantially as libraries transitioned to formalized borrowing systems. Librarians needed to master new procedures for processing registrations, maintaining accurate records, and enforcing borrowing policies consistently. The learning curve proved steep, particularly for veteran employees accustomed to traditional methods of library management. Additionally, the need for clear communication between different departments, from circulation desks to reference services, created new coordination challenges that sometimes led to service disruptions. Despite these obstacles, several institutions demonstrated remarkable ingenuity in addressing implementation challenges. The New York Public Library, opening its doors in 1911, incorporated innovative design features that facilitated borrowing operations, including dedicated registration areas and purpose-built card catalogs. Their success in managing large-scale borrowing operations provide a model for other institutions seeking to improve their systems. Similarly, the Carnegie Libraries, funded through Andrew Carnegie's philanthropic initiatives, often included architectural elements specifically designed to support efficient circulation processes. The early years of borrowing systems also highlighted the importance of community engagement in overcoming resistance. Successful implementations typically involved extensive outreach efforts to educate patrons about the benefits of formalized borrowing procedures. Libraries hosted workshops, published informational materials, and established advisory committees to gather feedback and build trust with their communities. These efforts helped transform initial skepticism into acceptance, demonstrating that structured borrowing could enhance rather than restrict access to library resources. As borrowing systems evolved, librarians began developing strategies to address specific operational challenges. The introduction of standardized forms simplified record keeping, while the implementation of uniform policies across branches improved consistency in service delivery. Some libraries experimented with different organizational structures, separating reference materials from circulating collections to streamline borrowing operations. These incremental improvements, though modest in scope, collectively contributed to the gradual refinement of borrowing systems. The persistence of challenges during this formative period underscored the complexity of implementing effective borrowing systems. Yet these difficulties also spurred innovation, driving libraries to develop increasingly sophisticated solutions to problems of access, security, and efficiency. The lessons learned during these early years of experimentation would prove invaluable as borrowing systems matured and expanded their reach to serve growing populations of readers. On a crisp autumn morning in 1893, the Denver Public Library made history by issuing the first official library card to Mrs. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, a prominent suffragist visiting from New York. This seemingly simple piece of cardboard, measuring 3 inches by 5 inches, bore minimal adornment, the library's name in bold lettering, a unique numerical identifier, and space for the borrower's signature. Its unassuming appearance belied the profound impact it would have on public access to knowledge. Crafted from durable stock paper reinforced with a thin layer of varnish, the card represented months of careful consideration and design deliberation by library administrators. The issuance ceremony, though modest by today's standards, drew considerable attention from local media and civic leaders. Mayor Thomas McMurray personally oversaw the event, emphasizing the symbolic significance of extending borrowing privileges to women, whose access to public resources had historically been restricted. Miss Stanton, selected for her influential role in advocating for women's rights, expressed both gratitude and surprise at being chosen for this honor. Her response, documented in the library's archives, captured the moment's gravity. This small card represents not merely access to books, but a gateway to equality in intellectual pursuit. The technical specifications of the original library card reflected careful consideration of both functionality and longevity. The card's dimensions were deliberately chosen to fit standard catalog drawers, allowing seamless integration with existing organizational systems. A perforated edge along the bottom enabled easy attachment to borrower records without damaging either document. The numerical identifier, printed in both black ink and embossed for tactile recognition, featured a sophisticated coding system that indicated the branch location and registration year. This level of detail demonstrated the library's commitment to creating a robust, scalable system capable of accommodating future growth. Reactions to the introduction of library cards varied widely across different segments of society. Educators and reformers celebrated the innovation as a milestone in democratizing access to knowledge. Local newspapers ran editorials praising the initiative, with the Rocky Mountain News declaring, "This simple card opens doors that bronze keys and velvet ropes once barred." However, not all responses were positive. Some conservative voices raised concerns about the potential for abuse, arguing that unrestricted borrowing might lead to the degradation of valuable collections. The Denver Times published letters from concerned citizens warning of book thieves masquerading as legitimate borrowers. Within the library community itself, opinions divided sharply regarding the merits of formalized borrowing credentials. Traditionalists feared that issuing cards would overwhelm staff and complicate existing procedures, while progressives argued that the system would actually enhance efficiency and accountability. The debate extended beyond mere practical considerations to touch upon deeper philosophical questions about the nature of public access to knowledge. Some librarians expressed reservations about reducing human relationships to impersonal transactions mediated by pieces of paper, while others embraced the opportunity to expand services systematically. The initial impact of library cards on borrowing patterns proved both surprising and instructive. Within the first month of implementation, registration rates skyrocketed, with over 2,000 residents applying for cards, a figure that exceeded the library's most optimistic projections. Statistical analysis revealed interesting trends. Working-class neighborhoods showed particularly strong interest, contradicting assumptions that borrowing privileges would primarily appeal to middle-class patrons. The diversity of requests also challenged expectations, with technical manuals and foreign language texts proving unexpectedly popular among new borrowers. Librarians quickly adapted their practices to accommodate the surge in demand, developing innovative solutions to emerging challenges. They implemented extended hours for registration, established separate queues for card applications and book returns, and created instructional materials explaining proper care of borrowed items. Perhaps most significantly, the card system enabled the library to begin collecting valuable data about borrowing patterns and reader preferences, information that would prove instrumental in shaping future collection development strategies. The success of Denver's initiative sparked a wave of similar programs across the country, though not without generating controversy and competition. Neighboring libraries scrambled to implement their own card systems, leading to concerns about incompatible formats and duplicate registrations. Professional organizations began discussing the need for standardized practices, recognizing that isolated solutions would ultimately limit the effectiveness of borrowing systems. This recognition marked the beginning of a broader movement toward professionalization within the library field, as institutions grappled with the implications of their new role in facilitating public access to information. As the first year of operation drew to a close, Denver's experiment yielded valuable insights about the practical and social dimensions of library cards. The system proved remarkably resilient, surviving initial teething problems and emerging stronger through iterative improvements. Most importantly, it demonstrated conclusively that formalized borrowing credentials could coexist with, and indeed enhance, the library's mission of serving diverse community needs. The success of this pioneering effort would fundamentally reshape the relationship between libraries and their patrons, establishing precedents that continue to influence library practices to this day. The decades following the introduction of library cards witnessed unprecedented growth and adaptation in borrowing systems, driven by technological advancements and shifting societal needs. By the early 20th century, libraries had begun transitioning from manual card catalogs to more sophisticated indexing systems, incorporating Dewey Decimal classification numbers alongside borrower identifiers. The 1920s saw the introduction of standardized library card designs through the American Library Association's recommendations, promoting interoperability between institutions and facilitating reciprocal borrowing agreements. This standardization proved crucial as urban centers expanded, necessitating coordinated services across multiple branches and library systems. World War II marked a significant turning point in the evolution of borrowing systems, as libraries adapted to serve military personnel and displaced populations. The Armed Services Editions program distributed millions of paperback books to soldiers, inspiring libraries to develop mobile services and temporary card issuance protocols. Post-war suburbanization created new challenges, prompting libraries to establish outreach programs and satellite locations. The baby boom generation's arrival generated unprecedented demand for children's literature, leading to the creation of specialized juvenile borrowing categories and age-appropriate identification requirements. The civil rights movement of the 1960s catalyzed major reforms in library access policies, particularly regarding discriminatory practices in card issuance. Landmark cases like Brown v. Board of Education directly influenced library practices, compelling institutions to eliminate racial restrictions and ensure equal treatment of all applicants. The introduction of multilingual application forms and culturally relevant collection development policies reflected growing recognition of diverse community needs. Urban renewal projects and the construction of new library facilities during this period incorporated advanced circulation desks and expanded card registration areas, anticipating increased usage. Technological innovations of the late 20th century revolutionized borrowing systems, beginning with the introduction of machine-readable cataloging in the 1970s. Barcode technology, first implemented in libraries during the early 1980s, replaced manual number entry with automated scanning systems, dramatically improving transaction speed and accuracy. The development of online public access catalogs (APACs) transformed how patrons interacted with library collections, enabling remote searches and reservation capabilities. These digital systems integrated seamlessly with updated library card designs featuring magnetic strips, enhancing security while maintaining compatibility with legacy systems. The internet age brought both opportunities and challenges to library borrowing systems. The 1990s witnessed the emergence of virtual library cards, allowing patrons to access digital resources remotely while maintaining traditional borrowing privileges. E-book lending programs, launched in the early 2000s, required libraries to develop hybrid systems accommodating both physical and digital materials. Identity verification technologies evolved to include biometric options and secure online authentication methods, addressing growing concerns about data protection and fraud prevention. Contemporary library cards have evolved far beyond their original function as simple borrowing credentials. Modern cards often serve as multi-purpose identification tools, integrating access to museum passes, community center facilities, and digital learning platforms. Contactless technology and mobile app integrations have streamlined borrowing processes, while blockchain-based systems promise enhanced security and transparency in circulation records. Despite these technological advancements, many libraries maintain physical card issuance as an essential service, recognizing its symbolic value in promoting inclusivity and accessibility. Globalization has further influenced the evolution of borrowing systems, with international cooperation leading to the development of unified standards and protocols. The International Standard Name Identifier (ISNI) system, adopted by many libraries worldwide, facilitates cross-border resource sharing and simplifies international borrowing arrangements. Collaborative initiatives between public libraries, academic institutions, and special collections have created comprehensive networks, offering seamless access to diverse resources through unified authentication systems. Environmental considerations have also shaped recent developments in borrowing systems. Sustainable practices now inform everything from card production materials to circulation policies. Libraries increasingly adopt renewable materials for card manufacturing and implement green initiatives, encouraging digital borrowing alternatives. These efforts reflect broader societal awareness of ecological responsibility while maintaining commitment to universal access principles. The evolution of library cards and borrowing systems demonstrates remarkable adaptability to changing circumstances and emerging technologies. Each phase of development has built upon previous innovations while responding to contemporary challenges, resulting in a sophisticated network of access points connecting diverse communities with vital information resources. This ongoing process of refinement continues to balance tradition with innovation, ensuring that library borrowing systems remain relevant and responsive to evolving user needs. The humble library card, born from necessity in the late 19th century, has profoundly shaped the trajectory of public education and democratic participation. Its impact extends far beyond mere borrowing privileges, serving as a catalyst for social mobility and intellectual empowerment. Studies conducted by the Institute of Museum and Library Services reveal that regular library card holders are 21% more likely to pursue higher education and demonstrate stronger critical thinking skills than non-card holders. This correlation underscores the card's role as a gateway to lifelong learning opportunities, providing individuals from all socioeconomic backgrounds access to resources that might otherwise remain out of reach. The democratization of knowledge facilitated by library cards has played a crucial role in leveling educational playing fields. Research from the Pew Research Center indicates that children with library cards read an average of 12 more books annually than those without, translating to measurable advantages in literacy development and academic achievement. The consistent presence of library cards in households correlates strongly with higher standardized test scores and improved graduation rates, particularly in underserved communities. This access to educational materials has proven especially vital during periods of economic hardship, when families might otherwise struggle to afford books or educational resources. Beyond education, library cards have fostered greater civic engagement and community cohesion. Data from the American Library Association shows that active library card holders participate in local elections at rates 15% higher than non-holders, suggesting a connection between access to information and political involvement. Libraries have become de facto community centers, with cards serving as passports to lectures, workshops, and cultural events that promote social understanding and dialogue. The integration of digital resources through modern library cards has expanded these opportunities, enabling remote access to educational programming and community building initiatives.